Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Over the Table on the Roll and Free ttrpg Actual Play Podcast. I am your host, Hunter the GM. And for today's guest that we have, there's not a lot of time where I listen to some podcasts and I enjoy it as much as I do these guys that I will introduce to you here shortly. Because we were following each other on Instagram is how it all started. And at first it became this was a podcast that would be in my list, but I didn't know when I was going to listen to it. But then when all my other shows I used to listen to started falling off or going on hiatus, I remember that I followed these guys, saw that I was always subscribed to their podcast, and I'm like, let's give this a listen and see how it goes. Because I also was becoming very picky on my shows. This then led to what can only be described as a 2-month marathon of me listening to 60 plus episodes of these guys, because this was what they had out. There were 60 plus episodes released that I spent the next 2 months catching up and listening to, just blaring through one after the other at 1.3 speed. And so it is without further ado that I finally get to have these guys on my show and get to talk to them and we get to learn a little bit more about the Fantasy Pants podcast. Starting with Jeremy.
Hey.
We also have so just say your name and who you play on the show.
All right. My name is Jeremy, and I play a variant human bard named Jules LaRoche.
All right. And then we also have Steven.
Hey, I'm Steven. I play Zebulon Black, Blanche Trudeau, Crispin Dubois.
And last and certainly not least, we have David.
Hey, I'm David Monroe. I play Chestameep, Sean Franklin Montelio, Sholay Arhalon, let's see, Xenia Ruba, Marcus Ruba.
Here we go.
What else is there? This is Ledulamois. We definitely have Dance Macabre, Atash. We have, there's a lot more. I'll stop there.
Yes.
I'm the Dungeon Master for the podcast, so I have a couple hats to wear.
Yes, and thank you all once again for coming on here. This is great. We've talked to each other on and off, and we finally got our schedules to align for a short bit.
Yeah, thank you, Hunter. Really, that was a lot of really nice things you said about us, and I remember watching the Discord server, and me, David, and Jeremy would all talk, be like, "Oh my God, this guy Hunter, he's flying through the episodes. We love to sort of watch your journey through the show." And something would happen, and you'd pop on the server, you'd be like, "Oh my God, this just had it." Honestly, dude, it was really cool for us to live that through you. So thank you. I mean, that's such a huge part of what we're doing and us having fun.
Yeah, that's exactly what keeps us going.
All right, so don't jump over each other at once when I start asking questions. So what I like to start off with usually asking everyone is, what got you guys started into TTRPGs in the first place?
Well, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording here, but David, why don't you? Was there more to your story that you were talking about us on our hike?
So this is kind of me introing you. Should we start chronologically? Should I start since I was the first to kind of get into it, and then
that is so perfect.
So okay. let me rephrase the question a little bit. When I ask that question, what I'm trying to mean is what it's like when it's more like what was the first TTRPG that you guys ever played that spearheaded to where you guys are now, and then lead up to how you guys met, what started the show, that kind of deal. So
I think it's kind of the same origin story.
Your humble beginnings to where you are now, basically.
It's funny. I think for all of us, in a very strange way. Oh, where's my screen? Oh, never mind. We're good. All of us, in a very strange way, we started very recently. I only been playing TTRPGs for a couple of years, and it all started with Curse of Strahd. I received a Curse of Strahd book from a friend, and a coworker of mine, a good friend of mine, was having his 18th birthday, and I knew his family very well. And I said, "Hey, let's run this Curse of Strahd thing. Let's do a session." And I had no idea what I was doing at all. My only prior time playing D&D was I think I, for fun, did a 3.5 adventure one shot for my bachelor party, and I used like sex dice. They were like, you tickle their nose, like it was just weird little dice. And so the whole time I was pretending like I was making rolls, and I had no stat blocks. I didn't know what I was doing. It was not at all an actual game, but it was a lot of fun. So this time around, I was like going to try to play it right. And I still did everything wrong. I still had no idea what the rules were during this Curse of Strahd game. But we finished that first one, and I was like, wow, that was electric. That was awesome. And it kind of just snowballed from there.
Yeah, so then through a friend at work, we started to play a GURPS game that David was a player in and Jeremy was a player in. Mm-hmm. That was kind of my introduction to TTRPGs and our introduction to Jeremy.
Yeah, those friends. I had been hanging out with them for a couple years before. We'd play a bunch of game nights, and we had talked about dabbling in TTRPGs, and that's when the whole GURPS thing kind of started getting rolling. And then we all found out that we were mutual friends, played online. I don't think I met Steven and David until like a year after we were playing online together. And then maybe, I don't know if it was that long, maybe a little shorter, but it was a while. And then Steven was like, "Hey, we all live right here. Do you want to just get together and play a campaign in person?" I'm like, yeah, why not? And then we all met for the first time after months of talking to each other.
Right, yeah, because we met for the first time in person to run, we were doing Candlekeep. I was running a Candlekeep Mysteries game. We would like hike up mountains and get to the top, and we just run for a couple hours and run a combat or a scene. And so we knew we had this like very good chemistry. We were playing with each other, and it was like so easy and effortless, and our characters, like everything was meshing so well. And yeah, we really built something just out of that. It was a lot of fun.
All right, so to leave our figurative lies open and expose ourselves.
Yeah, we always do.
We love it. We love doing that.
So what started the idea for Fantasy Pants? Like, what made y'all decide, let's do a podcast, and how'd y'all come up with the name?
Well, I think it was originally David's idea. I think David said the words first. I don't know where they came from, though.
Yeah, I don't know what inspired me to be like, let's do a podcast, but I guess we just had, at that point, I think we were running a bunch of games. We had Frost Maiden, we had Candlekeep, I had Strahd, we had a Ghost game we were doing. I think I might have been doing Wild Beyond the Witchlight at the time. So we had a lot of stuff happening, and I was getting a little more confident, and I knew we had great chemistry. So I think I just kind of put it forth almost like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if kind of thing. And we were entertaining it and talking about it like, yeah, let's do that. And we roped Jeremy into it. We didn't realize Jeremy was the missing puzzle piece that could make everything even remotely possible, because he has the tech know-how and the sound know-how, which is probably like such a layman's way to put it. But, Jeremy's genius kind of brought, like, turned this little ash into a full flame. But I cannot take credit for the name. That was you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had a little text thread going, and we were trying to think of names for this podcast for God knows how long. I only remember a couple of the previous iterations. I remember there was Wild Time,
Wild Time. Yeah, that's the only one I remember.
THYME. But then David was pushing for Earhole Ninjas.
Oh, yeah, Earhole Ninjas.
Oh, God, that just...
I forgot about that
sounds
one.
like one of those horrible B-horror movies.
Yeah. I still have one of our very early practice recordings of you introducing us as Earhole Ninjas.
Yeah. Because I improv it right there. Every time we did an episode, I improv a new name, and that was when I did the first time, and I was like, no, wait, that ruled. And you guys were like, it didn't. It didn't
A
rule
recording
at all.
of that exists.
Yeah, so I don't really know where the idea of fantasy pants came from, but I think
You
it was
just blurted
like,
it out.
yeah, I think it was just like, oh, it sounds like fancy pants, but we're playing a fantasy game, so it's fantasy pants, and everybody seemed to like it. So it was the first thing that we really all agreed on and said, hey, this sounds like fun, and that's what it is. It's just fun. It's just a fun name. It doesn't mean much. It's just goofy, and that's kind of our philosophy about the game is to have fun and take it seriously, but be goofy with it.
Yeah, and it's also funny because I didn't realize this until probably months after I started listening to all that. When I was looking at your kind of podcast logo, I was like, "Oh, hey, that's a zipper. That's not just two dragons, that's a zipper." I did. It took me a second to put two and two together. I'm like, "Oh, that's creative."
Yeah, so we like to keep the pants puns going. When David gives out inspiration, we call it buttons, like a pants button instead of just an inspiration point. Or people who listen to the show, we call them pants people.
Which started off fully as a joke. I just that, and I hated it, and I loved how much I hated it, and I hated how much I loved it, and then you guys were like, "You can't keep doing this," and I kept doing it until it stuck, and it did, and I'm so proud.
I still remember the first time that Steven said it unironically.
Oh yes, I danced.
Yeah, I gave in eventually. You rallied very hard for pants people, and I'm glad for it because. It's goofy, What the hell?
Pants people. So good.
I got this idea for dice that y'all need. You need like blue crystal dice with like gold lettering. For the 20 is a poop emoji, and the 1 is a horseshoe.
Nice. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
I had somebody earlier design a master which had a horseshoe for the 1, and I think the 20 was just like a zipper sort of thing. I'm not sure if it really came out in the 3D printing, and then I just haven't ever had time to try to make dice with it, so it sits in the closet. But someday. But yes, I do love the idea of a blue die with gold lettering, a horseshoe on the 1. And something on the 20, whether it's a pile of crit or a zipper or whatever.
I mean, literally,
that's excellent.
The joke is you crit your pants. So I mean,
exactly, yeah.
That's why I got the idea.
I love to scream, I crit my pants. It's my favorite thing about the podcast.
I thought you guys started doing that, and I was like, no, I won't accept this. I'm not. You kept pushing for it, so it's.
I also love the running gag of that one. It's like, there's something to do with a horse? Even if there's no horse around, it's just you hear a horse in the background, the whinny of horses in the far off distance.
I know, it started off really strong early, and then as the campaign progressed, it got, I think, harder and harder for David to justify, like, horses appearing. But there was recently a seahorse, and that was pretty fun.
It was great.
Yeah, the seahorse, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So we were talking. Speaking of humble beginnings, because you were kind of mentioning earlier before we got started, but so I would like to kind of for the listening audience to reiterate and go more in detail. You guys were talking about your mutual love for the Glass Cannon Network and how that also kind of brought you guys together as well a bit. So just go a little more into detail about that for me.
Yeah, to kind of reiterate where we started, I've been listening to Glass Cannon for a while. I got into, before I even actually started playing tabletop games, I got into podcasts. I started with Adventure Zone and was really unsure, but I'd finished all my fantasy novels I've been listening to, so I needed something new because I was in masonry at the time, and days were long and kind of boring. So I picked up a ttrpg show for the first time, and just kind of fell absolutely in love with it. And the next one I grabbed after I finished that was the Glass Cannon, which, again, kind of slow burn, but when it hit, it really hit. I just absolutely fell in love. The cast is super funny, just really likable people. And so me and Steve were on like a 21-mile hike, and we're just chit-chatting, and I was like, hey, you got to listen to this podcast. And I played him a clip. And to me, it's like this hilarious, hysterical clip, and I could just see in his eyes that he wanted nothing to do with it. Like he's just like, this is not even good. And then so I was shocked. I think it was months later, and you're like, yeah, so I'm caught up on the Glass Can podcast. Like, what happened? It's just
Yeah, it's so hard when you show your friends something out of context. Like I think we all have that experience where there's a funny video or a funny meme or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it kind of stuck with me, and I've always been a fan of fantasy, and much like David, at work I would listen to audio books, fantasy books, and whatnot. And same thing. One day I was caught up on everything I was listening to, and I said, well, you know what? I'll give this thing a shot. And as much as I like to give David shit, I really trust his opinion on media and fantasy in particular. So I stuck with it, and yeah, got totally captivated by it. And I think I've listened to almost everything in the Glass Cannon library, which is vast. It's really big. So that kind of convinced me that, hey, I think this ttrpg thing is worth a shot, even though it's kind of scary. Step outside your comfort zone and make funny voices around a table. Decided to give it a shot.
All right, and Mr. Jeremy Midnight Prince over here. I guess was your love for Glass Cannon as overflowing as our other two compatriots we have here?
Yeah. It was when we first started actually setting up and gearing up to start the podcast. I hadn't listened to them, but I had heard both Stephen and David talking about them a lot. And then we got close to releasing the podcast, and they're like, hey, Glass Cannon is playing down in Boston. Do you want to go? I'm like, sure, why not? And so then I proceeded to binge 100 plus episodes in like a month and a half. And it was awesome. And I'm on a little break right now because I'm still a little burned out, but I will be getting back to it because they're awesome. We went and saw them live last month, and it was a wonderful time.
Yeah, so that was what? I think that was our third time seeing them in Boston, right?
It was my second time with you guys. I think you went the year before we all went for the podcast release. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. And y'all missed my boy Rainey there. My boy Rainey was, I think, at that same show too. And I'm like, did you happen to all each other? And y'all were like, no.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that. Yeah, you mentioned Instagram earlier, and we've found a really, really cool community full of like-minded people who are involved in TTRPGs, whether it's playing them, making them, recording them, making dice for them. And yes, when you connected us with Renee, I would love to meet them the next time we go down for a Boston show next year.
Yeah, so Rainey, if you're listening to this, you got some fans, and I'm coming after you next to get you on this show next, because I know we've been talking about that as well. And we're trying to get our stars to line as well on that, because Rainey was on another podcast for a long time. He still kind of is. He just took a step back from it. It's called DMs After Dark, and they do all sorts of different TTRPGs. So many different kinds. It's always fun to listen to their stuff. And then he started doing his own solo play stuff, which is what got me looking into doing solo play. And now he's got his own show where he kind of the same thing, playing games, interviewing all sorts of people. And it's just, he's a great guy, great to talk to, great to listen to. And so, yeah, I'm glad I got to kind of be that little bridge and get y'all connected a little bit. So I thought that was really cool to be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're so excited to make those connections. We've been really lucky so far, and that's what led us here.
Yeah,
one of the coolest things about this whole journey is all the bridges we've built and people we've met, and like the community is it's so incredible. I don't know. I've always been incredibly socially awkward and kind of shut off until all this, and like meeting people who I guess I can sort of connect with and talk to, it's really opened me up. And I don't know, like, yeah, I can't wait to just meet more. It's awesome.
Yeah, because I had actually known you guys like way before this because like I was trying to say, like I was mentioning earlier, back when I was doing my Mysteries Unknown podcast, we were following each other back then as well. And then I just kind of retired that, rebranded. because I went through some stuff I was going through at the time, and then just kind of came back. And kind of my little humble beginnings is, and since I'm already on a hot take roll, and I'm going to share another hot take.
Oh no!
I think Critical Role is mid. I don't understand the appreciation, or at least I don't appreciate it as much as other people do. Like, I've heard about Critical Role, never really caught my attention. But however, when they did EXU Calamity and they got Brendan Lee Mulligan to DM that game, oh, I was hooked. Because Brendan Lee Mulligan just does such a good job of that, being that narrative and very descriptive dungeon master. And that's kind of what was that final push for me to want to actually start doing podcasting. Like, I want to be able to tell stories like he can. Was my kind of that big final push for me. Like, yeah, I'm going to start doing this.
Yeah, his energy is incredible. I actually agree with your earlier claim. I have tried Critical Role and I fall off every time. I think it's probably a fantastic show. I think it's just not my energy, not my pacing. But I love Brennan's work. I think I first caught him on he went on to the Adventure Zone and he DM'd for something called the Dadlands. If you haven't listened to that, absolutely check it out. It's super funny. It's just like this Mad Max world, but like all the people are these clans of different dad archetypes, and Brennan he just eats it up. It's incredible.
Okay, now I'm trying to think of other questions to ask you. Oh yeah, because we're talking about the show, and you all have currently been doing and still are doing the Radiant Citadel campaign.
Yeah.
Which has been very interesting. We get David putting his own little twist onto it. So, kind of more a question for you, Mr. David. Tell us a little bit more about Radiant Citadel.
Yeah. So basically, Radiant Citadel is a official book released by Wizards of the Coast, and it's the conceit behind it is they wanted to explore a lot of settings not typically explored in modern fantasy. So you're seeing various cultures, mythologies, kind of with a cool twist. I think, every writer for the book is someone from that culture. So there's a lot of really cool, unique perspectives, and it's honestly just it's amazing. And I almost like my first thoughts looking at it is this needs to have more attention put towards it because it's just so eye-opening and so creative and so cool. And all of it, like all these worlds, all these places are generally kind of, I view them as separate worlds. They're really just kind of, they can be civilizations all in the same setting if you want. You can kind of, there's a lot of versatility in the book, but they're all connected through this one central interdimensional hub, this city called the Radiant Citadel, which is sort of wrapped around this grand diamond. And from here, you can like essentially just phase teleport between all these worlds. It's a very cool setting. The book itself gives you a very peaceful, very optimistic kind of location in the Citadel where everything's generally very well structured. I destroyed that because I like a lot of strife and sadness, but you can do so much with it. I would recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, David decided to make it way harder.
Yeah, speaking of which, I will probably go ahead and say this now while I have the chance before we go any further. I will put a spoiler warning right now because I have been all caught up with this. I am not going to hold back on questions or talk about details that have happened so far in the campaign. So if you have not listened to every single episode of Fantasy Pants podcast, pause right here, catch the fuck up, and then come back and listen to this. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think to someone who hasn't listened yet, there's good stuff. We've made people laugh, we made people cry, and everything in between. So, thank you, Hunter, for the recommendation. And if you're listening and you haven't heard it yet, I hope you check it out.
Yes. And so, speaking about, since we're already on topic, we got the campaign. Now let's also learn a little bit about the characters that we have going on, because we have an interesting dynamic here, because usually you have decent sized groups when it comes to, but it's just the three of you. So I guess I don't know if the wording is correct on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but to kind of make up for the lack of players, no offense, you all introduce the sidekick mechanic, which is a very underutilized mechanic in D&D. So I guess kind of explain, because I know y'all have mentioned this too in the episode, David was really about wanting to go super hard and being super brutal to in this game, he didn't he wanted to pose a challenge to you all, I guess is what I'm looking for. So what was kind of that whole conversation, I guess?
Well, I think we've always just really trusted David. Aside from the game that we all met playing, David has always just been our DM. So he was kind of like our ttrpg mama bird. So whatever David says goes, you know, and
You say you call him mama bird. I'm just picturing like how a mama penguin feeds the baby by like, whoa.
yeah. So
I eat TTRPGs and I regurgitate them into their open, wanting mouths.
exactly, David chewed up.
That's actually scary accurate.
David chewed up the sidekick mechanic and then spat them into our little bird mouths. What I'm trying to say is, it was David who realized, hey, I think these guys are going to need some help. Let's throw them a bone in the form of sidekicks.
You said it really weird. I don't know if you know
thanks.
that.
All right. So we have the sidekicks, and then we have some of our main characters. Let's start off first with Mr. Jeremy, who plays our beloved Midnight Prince. Now, is it Jules LaRoche or Jules LaRoche? How do you pronounce that last name?
LaRoche. As
LaRoche.
in,
So
sounds
not like
SH.
SH. I was because I was thinking about that earlier before we started. I'm like, is it LaRoche or LaRoche? Because it sounds like LaRoche when I hear it on the show, but then that thought hit my head. I'm like, I should probably ask.
Oh, I'm pretty sure David had said it that way like the entire first quarter of the show.
Incorrectly.
It's true.
All right. So I guess curious to know what gave you the concept for Jules?
Loud and proud.
Nah.
It's so far from what I'm used to playing that I said I just need to 100% commit to the opposite direction, and so I did.
So
it was very uncomfortable at first, but I got there.
Now, I guess I'm trying to understand is when you say complete opposite, do you mean like, do you see yourself more extroverted whilst Jules was kind of more introverted but still caring at the same time, or vice versa?
Oh, no. In the past, I've always played very introverted, broody characters. Basically like Dresden.
I was about to say, Jules kind of can be broody sometimes in the show, unless I just absolutely
he can. Oh, yeah. Well, but he does it with flair.
On his sleeve, where your prior characters would keep it in.
I also think that Jules sort of blossoming into somebody who was more charismatic is also like parallel to Jeremy reaching some sort of comfort with
sure
being on mic and playing a character, you know?
Sure.
I think we saw that progressing at the same time.
Well, we were trying to figure out who was going to play a bard because David was like, this campaign would be really great with a bard. And then Steven was like, I'll do it, but I don't want to.
Right.
And then I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I sent the text saying, all right, I'll be the bard.
Which is funny because it's all based on... It was like an earlier iteration of the campaign where I was going to have luminary agents just be bards. So like I was like, oh wait, everyone's got to have a bard. And then I just walked that back. So you didn't even need to have a bard. I lied.
Oh my god. That's the first time I've heard that we didn't need to have a bard.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
Just imagine.
Jeez.
They're called the Backstreet Bards.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I know. I remember you saying before we started, you were like, no, I'm going to tell you guys. One of you is going to want to play a bard. It's going to be super important. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll fall on that sword. And then Jeremy was like, no, it's okay. I'll do it. So I said, oh, thank goodness I don't have to worry about playing a bard.
Well, it's like, I also have to say, those songs that you pop up with every now and then for Jules absolutely just fucking slap.
Yeah,
like, literally,
thanks,
I still play These Lights because I like downloaded it on my phone and then I nightcord it. So when you play it, it's got like a little more rockish vibe to it a little bit.
Sure.
Also, I'm just used to everything sounding so much faster now that if I try to play it on normal, it sounds super slow.
These Lights was such a wonderful, magical moment for us and such a surprise because, like, we had no idea it was coming and Jeremy played it for us live.
You had no idea it was coming.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. I didn't know it was coming. David knew it was coming. And man, what a high point in the show. And yeah, I think we would all like to do them more often. I would love to just lock Jeremy in the studio and say, make more music for the podcast. But it's just the production time is like so massive for Jeremy. I don't want to speak to all of his hard work, but I see it.
Full-time job, editing the weekly podcast.
Yeah.
Music on top of that. It's a lot.
And my goodness, we're just so grateful whenever we get one of those. They're so awesome, and we love making them or watch them be made.
Yeah, I try to do minimum one per main arc.
Yeah, because you also had the trying to get Jules' love interest. Her name escapes me right now. Dance.
Cortez, Dance
Yes. Yeah, trying to get the song to get her to dance was really catchy, and I remember I mentioned that on a previous interview I did, and I mentioned that, and I was immediately
thanks.
no, the song was not called "Shut Up and Dance."
That's a more famous song.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last one, I don't think you've done any new ones since this last one, but which we'll talk about probably here at some point when someone met their unfortunate demise. The song that you wrote for that actually had me tearing up a little bit when I heard that one.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was that one was written in like an hour. That episode happened, and then Steven and David left, and all I could do was sit down and pick up my guitar and just write. It just all came out like in an hour.
Broke us. It really got us, that whole sequence, man.
That was a powerful night.
Yes. Yeah, and speaking of broken, Steven, tell us about Zebulon Black.
Man.
Take a button, Hunter.
I will gladly accept the Fantasy Pants complimentary button.
Hell
We
yeah.
love making Steven sad.
Well earned. Man, I still miss Zebulon Black. Geez. Where do I begin? I think David and I have told the origin story, at least of Zebulon's name. He is a real person, Zebulon Black, in a cemetery near my home that David and I would frequently walk in. So I remember reading the stone and being like, man, that's such a cool name. It would be a great D&D character. So that's how Zebulon got his name, at least. And I wanted to play a hero that maybe wasn't your typical everyday knight in shining armor. So Zebulon was a dragonborn whose growth was a little bit stunted. He spoke with a little bit of a lisp, but despite everything that he had to overcome, he was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and wanted to make something of himself. And I think he at least could be at times pretty badass.
Yeah, because so this is why I brought the spoilers, because unfortunately, like we've mentioned, Zebulon Black did meet an unfortunate demise at one point during the Santion. Was that when that happened?
Santion, yeah.
Yeah. So I will never be able to pronounce those names to save my life. Like
I say them all wrong.
It's like it's a famous Chris like one. It's like either pronounce the name right or get in the electric chair. I would have been like, so where you plug it in?
Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. I know David is good with that stuff.
No, I do not.
Hey man, you try and you do way better than I could.
Yeah,
you at least try.
Exactly.
That's big. You try.
You try and you teach us, or try to teach us, whichever.
Yeah, like in my nails and kneecaps series I've been doing, we literally have because we're all a bunch of neurodivergent, like chaotic misfits. We have one person that's like, he's neurodivergent, but he's like the most normal out of all five of us that are on there doing this show. And he's also the note taker. So every time it's like, so what were you about to say? Were you trying to say something, Steven?
I think it was background noise.
No, I wasn't. It might have been a dog barking.
Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure I didn't want to interrupt you on accident. So where was I now? I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah.
Note taker.
Yeah, so when every time someone comes to me with a question, it's like, crap, I don't remember. Buddy, do you have this in your notes? That's like Like there was one time where it's like I'm going to edit that when I finally get to it. But there's one episode where it's like there's an NPC that's tied to one of the other characters, and then we're all sitting there like, what's this dude's name again? And I remember we mentioned it in episode 1, which is already out. So I'm like, give me 10 minutes. And I literally pull up the episode on my phone and I listen to it to try to figure out what the guy's name was again.
Wow. We're lucky enough that David has a memory like a steel trap.
Yeah, I try. I remember today, there's a lot of times where like I remember details about your characters that you guys forgot, and it's like it's you know, I get it because it's been so long. I don't know why I remember things as well as I do. I don't remember anything else nearly as well. It's strange.
It's almost supernatural.
I'm the kind of game master that's like, I have like basic outlines for stuff, and then I just roll with the dice and the punches as they go along. Like, I never put anything in stone. Like, I want to just keep talking, but I'm trying to figure out like how many questions there are I can just punch down into you until I beat you to submission.
Absolutely, man. Let us have it.
What else do we want to talk about? Well,
let's also talk. We can do. It's talk.
So let's focus on, because y'all end up bringing in some secondary characters for a little bit as well. We had Dresden and Blanche Trudeau, who have been very impactful in their own ways. So I guess so Blanche Trudeau came along because, well, Zebulon died.
Yeah.
So that had come in, and then Dresden was just kind of like this interesting background character that just seemed to like just fit in like at the perfect opportune moment. Interestingly enough, and then you had bunny rabbit guy. What was his name?
Dubois.
Crispin Dubois. I'm just picturing I'm picturing first like, oh, Crispin Dubois.
All of the names are French. I don't know why.
Yeah, I honestly don't know either. It happened. There were a lot of French names, and geez, I don't know how to explain that one. But they're all kind of cool in their own way. The characters are all very unique, I think. So even though their names maybe sound similar, they all bring their own flavor. Yeah, when we realized that, David wasn't pulling punches, we thought that it might be nice to have some characters floating out there in the world just in case something happened to one of our main characters. So we had introduced Crispin and Dresden before anything even happened to Zebulon. And when Zebulon did die, I love the Crispin character, but I thought that he wasn't exactly main character material. So that's why we decided to come up with Blanche Trudeau, who was a little bit more outgoing and could tell a different story, being a turtle, where the turtles were the turtle race in our world. David could speak a little bit more to this, are a little underrepresented. They're sort of an outlier race, and I thought that was a cool story to tell.
Yeah.
Also,
go ahead.
It's also worth noting that at the time Zebulon died, I'd brought the backup characters in to like do their own thing in this arc, so that I was like, oh no, we need a backup for the backups because the backups are already here. So things got real goofy real quick.
Yeah. So I am kind of curious. I want to kind of go a little depth because I know, like we already said, David, you were not playing on holding back. You were not going to pull punches. You were going to hit your best friends with everything you had. You were going to make them crit their pants as much as they could before they were like begging for mercy. But what was like? I can't imagine that every DM is prepared for, I killed someone's player character. What was kind of like the what was kind of like your thoughts when that happened?
It was like an out-of-body experience. I felt horrible, actually, because the whole thing resulted from me just taking a natural one that Jeremy rolled earlier really far and without getting into a bunch of lore, a guy turned into a shadow demon, and I had the shadow demon, which I was a stat block. I basically upgraded from the shadow demon stat block and gave it legendaries and all this stuff. I had it go after Zebulon, who had been like being the big damn hero, saving hostages nearby, but kind of isolated. And I cut him down. And there were other bad guys there that he was already in combat with. And because there was no other target around, they decided to finish the job. And my way of playing is I go hard because I always trust the players. I always trust that there's something. But in this situation, it turned out there was no answer. There was no, backup, ability or plan or anything. And the dice rolls just worked out against him. And it broke my heart, but it had to happen. It's just how it all landed.
Yes, the horse Nat 1 carried him on the chariot to heaven.
Yes, yeah. It truly was a natural 1 on the death save that finished him, and I
did it.
Yeah, I mean, it was meant to be in a lot of ways. It felt like it was meant to be.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, because I remember after that episode, I was just like, Zebulon. It's like saying, what happened to Zebulon? I remember just coming into the Discord like, what?
Yeah, I know. I was a little afraid because, I don't mean this to take anything away from any of our other characters, but a lot of people said that Zebulon was their favorite character. So when the popular character dies, it's like, oh shit, what do we do now? Am I going to be able to make somebody who can kind of fill that gap sort of thing? And it was nerve-wracking, but I think we pulled it off.
Yeah, because I think about it is I remember having this conversation with someone a while back. It's always there in the back of your mind, yeah, there's a chance that this character may die. And right. I've had that happen a couple times with player characters when I've finally had a chance to play as well. If I've had characters die, when it's like you expect it to happen, but then you don't almost at the same time. Because I remember I was playing a halfling Viking in another game I used to play in, and I had been playing this person for a couple games, and there was this moment where it's we were facing a small party of giants, and it's my character was going down, getting back up because she was a Viking. She had these crazy abilities where it's it was a lot harder for her to go down, and she went down 3 or 4 different times and still kept getting back up. But the final time, it's these giants were about to attack the party, and I was well, unless I do something, they're just going to wipe them out. So I ended up choosing to sacrifice my character so that way my party had a fighting chance.
Whoa.
I love beautiful. That. Yeah, it is beautiful, exactly.
Yeah, so, I mean, was I bummed out that happened? Yeah, I was sad because I really liked her as a character, and she was really great. Actually, a buddy of mine that I talked to on Instagram, he did a little sketch of her for me, because it was this game I play. You could choose different careers, and you pick 2 of them, and she was a Viking tavern wench halfling, so she was a short stack muscle mommy. I called her.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, man, and if there is no threat of death, then the characters in the game just mean less, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know. Especially with this current game I'm doing, with my City of Mist campaign I'm doing, it's I warned my players in advance, I am going to traumatize your characters in whatever way possible that I can, because it will play with your deepest dark desires and all of that kind of feeling. But I'm also not as big of an asshole as David is, and I will still give him a way out if I absolutely can, depending on the dice rolls. And I mean no offense when I say any of this, David. I love you. You're a great dude, but I have to give you shit for it a little bit here and there.
Oh, absolutely do. Yeah. Please. I feed on it.
Yeah, we wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. And so it was just cool, all these crazy moments that happened during Fantasy Pants. I freaking what was before Samta Tion, the one that was God's breath, yes. That whole arc was crazy.
The
Because it was like the horror
I
back
love
then.
that one.
Oh, I could still hear the come on now, Cully. That still makes me shiver every time I think about that. When you were singing that song.
Oh, the Awakening song bits. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That was such a fun gimmick for the arc. Yeah, man, that was, in many ways, it was so much simpler. It was like a simpler time for Fantasy Pants, and like my notes were less complex. But I loved that arc. I love the feel of it. I love the world. I love the big bad. Yeah, that was a really good time.
Yeah, because we also got to learn about our favorite newscaster, Storyteller Orin here.
Yeah, I know. It was great to see a little behind the curtain with Storyteller Orin.
I was so ready to just kill off the pseudo narrator of our show. I was just like so fully on it in the second arc, and the guys were they were not okay with that.
No. Right, exactly. You took this very important character in the show and just put his life and his safety entirely in our hands. And that was very nerve-wracking. We tried really hard to keep our narrator alive. Like, where else do you find that? Where do you come up with this shit?
So we had God's breath, and then Santillan with the whole the evil owl creature and the curse that he was passing. That one, I was actually like trying to actively think like, okay, who is this creature be? Who is in charge of it? Like, I was like actually trying to follow along with the mystery, trying to help figure it out, trying to like do my own little mental notes, trying to figure out like, okay, this is happening, this person's related to this thing's all this, and then all the Pigman left an impression on me for sure. Like,
yeah,
like it's like you introduce this character, it's like, oh, he seems great, and then as the story gets on, like, you can't help but feel so bad for the guy because of all this stuff. Because it's not like he had a choice in the thing. It was basically like he was like, what's the word I'm looking for? Manipulated.
It's so fun. I love the character of the Pigman. It's one of my favorite NPCs in our show, easily. And we were so close to him never even really getting screen time and showing up, because the only reason he got involved was I gave Blanche and Dresden a choice, like, hey, do you want to go and learn about things through Serapio? Do you want to go hang out with the Pigman? And like, basically you had to get like some entrance into this dinner party, the revolutionaries were asking you to, and you chose the Pigman. And I was like, oh, cool, this will be fun. I had intended to do an earlier, like, actual public sort of lucha libre contest or a battle, and I did not get to because Zebulon died. And I was like, well, I can't do a lucha libre battle, right after Zebulon died. I literally chronologically would have had to happen a half an hour after his canonical death. And it was like, there's no world where I can swing the mood that hard and that fast. Like, there's no universe. So I thought we just skipped it. I thought Pigman was not going to get explored, and you turned that all around. We had a lot of fun. So that was on you guys.
Yeah, and he became like I think the second biggest heart-wrenching character besides Zebulon.
Yeah, and then I also think of I'm forgetting how to pronounce her name. Zebulon's was it his grandmother? That's like the big, like, top dog of Luminary.
Cholet,
yeah. It's kind of seeing her transformation throughout as the episodes go on has also been really cool to kind of witness too, in a sense. Kind of seeing like basically again, no offense, this uppity bitch to becoming like then saying like, oh, she's not just an uppity bitch, she's an uppity bitch with feelings.
Yeah, we saw the hard side of Cholet for so long, and then she finally started to crack, like just before Zebulon died.
Yes, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. That last scene we had together, and it's a good thing we had it, because there wasn't going to be another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we fast forward now to basically we just finished up the arc of the Golden Bay with Jean Franklin my favorite NPC. Like if you put think of that meme where the mother's talking to the child is Chester, and the mother's like, "Oh, I have no favorites." You see that child Chester walk away, and then the mother would turn to the other child, which is John Franklin, and it's like, "It's you're the favorite."
Hell yeah. So I have a question. Did you always like John Franklin though?
Honestly, at first, no.
Okay.
Not through the first couple episodes.
All right.
But he grew on me. Like Chester was just Chester. He was just kind of there. He was Jules' best friend. He played a role, and I'm not saying Chester was bad, but compared to John Franklin, I think story-wise, John just always stood out to me a little bit more. And then when we got into the Golden Bay and we see more of his backstory, this is like, oh, he's like this king's son. He's in line for the throne, but there's also all this other stuff that politics-wise he's got to deal with over it with the Golden Bay. And it's just, that all kind of came out kind of like as a freaking tsunami-wise. Which...
Yeah, Jean, started out as an antagonist, so I'm always curious to know when people began to like Jean, because there are some people, believe it or not, who still to this day don't like Jean Franklin as a character.
Well, those people are wrong.
I always like to ask that question.
It's like, well, it's always funny. Like sometimes it's the person that you're supposed to despise the most at the beginning ended up becoming like the most adored, usually, which is interesting because it's also David's great role playing as a GM, where it's like he's actually like narrating this arc that John has been going through because I think y'all are rolling for the sidekicks, but John's still the one kind of like controlling like their actions and what they say and do. So it's interesting to kind of see how y'all kind of have these shared roles with the sidekicks, which I think makes it a really cool aspect of the game as well.
I love it a lot. It's such a great system when you only have a small group, and it lets you have, as a DM, have NPCs that you don't control in combat. So there's no, they don't fit the DM NPC, the all feared DM NPC that RPG horror stories runs away from and screaming. Jean Franklin and Chester, they're so easy because I can just sort of explore the main characters through a lens of people who are growing with them, and we can bounce back off each other with people with characters who are really going close together without forcing Stephen and Jeremy to I guess bounce off of each other all the time. When you only have two players, it's so helpful to bring more substance into the story, and that's kind of what I saw with the sidekick system, and it's worked out so well. I feel like I've had so much fun with it.
And it makes us a little more collaborative. It's sort of like a three-legged race, where you tie one pair of legs together, because you, David, our GM, controls the personality and the role play of the character, but then when we're in battle, we're controlling, us players are controlling the mechanics. So we often find ourselves in the position of, how would this character that we did not create, how would they act in a battle or a mechanical situation? So it's a fun additional form of cooperation. And I think, I know we talked about it before, but one of the reasons that Jean Franklin is so special to us is because that first GURPS game that we played together, Jean Franklin, or a version of him, was David's PC.
Oh yeah, I think y'all may have mentioned that once or twice now that you bring it back up again.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be more or less an Easter egg, and even at the start, like, I was going to give them a choice of the sidekicks they can pick, and I had this initial first combat where they fought 3 different sidekick variations for Steven, because Jeremy had Chester already, and at the end of it, they chose Jean, who was, at that point, really kind of a fun little Easter egg to be like, I remember this guy? And so I was like, all right, I guess we're going to do him again. And it really worked very well.
Yeah, and having a John paired with Butch Riddle, they became like basically powerhouses for turtles. Like, I would laugh every time where David was like, why the fuck can I not hit these turtles?
Dude, I can't hit the turtles. Oh, it's brutal.
I know it's getting to the point where I feel bad about how defensive the turtles are.
Oh, don't feel bad. I love my high defense characters. I literally have some characters that I made in my other fantasy game I play in that I personally try my best to give them like the stuff that makes them like have high defense. So
yeah. Well, after losing Zebulon, I said to myself, okay, I want to build a character that's not going to die.
My emergency plan in any fight is to get behind Blanche.
Yeah, she's a powerhouse, that's for sure. Tough to bring her down. But if you break through that AC, then her HP pool isn't very big. Being a wizard.
Yeah. Oh, and I just remembered this just now when we were talking about because thinking about Golden Bay. There was one moment where I actually had a visceral, angry reaction at David's GMing skill. When you decide to have the mind-controlled Dwergar stab the half-orc princess.
Yes.
I remember your reaction. Yeah.
I was pissed. Because I'm like, you had fucking Jules do all this length to save her and try to get down behind the mystery and try to protect her, and then it's like, nope, shank.
Oh, yeah. In my notes, it was like, yeah, she died. And only after the episode, looking back, I was like, oh, Orcish ferocity exists, and so I guess there's a 1 HP left because that's a thing, and then so I brought it in. But yeah, I was trying to be very mean there. I am shocked at how many people survived the murder mystery arc because it was not. I had meant that to be, I guess, more of a bloodbath, and the gentleman did everything right.
Oh, God,
it's like I forgave you this time.
Yeah. I know it was very stressful to try to keep people from dying in that arc.
Yeah, because when the action started up, everyone was like freaking out, like, "Oh crap, it's happening!"
I mean, there were some characters that just, from a narration standpoint, we just weren't going to be able to save. You know what I mean? But, gosh, we really got put through the ringer. Using all sorts of crazy resources to try and save lives. And hey, it sounds like we surprised David.
I was very surprised. No, seriously, there more people survived than I ever expected. People who I thought were certainly dead were not. It was kind of a victory for you guys.
Yeah, something else I've also noticed is because I've noticed this every now and then is I see there's a lot of stuff that, especially when it comes to Jules and like his family history and then the ties he has with his dark powers that he's currently wielding. I like how everything seems to almost tie back to like that story in one way or another. Was that something you all like collectively talked about? That all of this would somehow tie in together? Or is this kind of like, oh, this just happens to tie in and we're just going to go with it kind of deal?
I don't fully remember. I think I came up with just a very loose backstory for Jules, but I think the connection to the grander story was all David. And since that inception, though, we kind of bounced back and forth about what connections could be where and all that kind of stuff.
I have a continuation to that answer, and you all might hate it. I feel like it's almost saying too much and lifting the screen up a little too much, but I'm going to do it. I'm making a lot of this up,
David.
I'm making a lot of this up as I go. Like a lot of, especially with Jules and that side of things. I'm sitting there, I'll be in the shower, and I'm like, well, now what? Like, there's a lot of things I had pre-planned going in the story, but there's so much stuff that is purely just I'm seeing where the wind takes it. I'm planting seeds, and I don't know what the seeds are. Are they watermelon? I don't know. But they're out there, they're getting water, and eventually they'll grow into something.
Well, yeah, dude, it's like that whole part of this bigger story has just become, it feels like it's just become so organic, and it just kind of flows into the next phase pretty naturally.
It's amazing that it feels that way, because it's not how it happened.
Well, good job, David.
Yeah. It's also kind of interesting because that makes me think of some stuff I've done with my nails and kneecaps game I've been running. So, spoiler alert for this stuff that I'm going to talk about as well. So, what I've been doing, because I was talking to y'all about this before the show too, was instead of running the game modern day, the timeline takes place during a few years after the Vietnam War. So think Mafia 3, but think Mafia 3, but with modern fantasy mixed into it all. And one of we just finished the first case of the arc. Well, the first case. It's a very long campaign with a bunch of different cases. They just finished the first case, and the person they had to fight, they came across that. Oh, she was seeing a therapist, and after doing some investigating and sleuthing, why was she seeing a therapist? Oh, she lost her son during the war, and then her husband died of grief basically after not long after that. And so we've been making like all these like different connections like that tie back to the war. But then one of my characters was like, I have this idea for a backup character I want to do. And so he's playing on the Rift of Odysseus, and the guy was also like in the military, and then because he's being Odysseus, it's like, oh, this person's son was like part of my ops team that died during the process. I was like the only survivor of the platoon that he was in, kind of deal. So it's just making all those fun connections with just coming up with like characters too. So like I completely understand what you get at, David, when it's like you're thinking back on stuff later. It's like, oh, I can make this connection with that. It's like it's amazing sometimes what you can come up with.
It's like when you do this, everyone's just saying things and you're making decisions and you're building this world. But what's happening is it's almost like you're dumping like little puzzle pieces all over the floor, and then in retrospect and almost in improv, you're putting the puzzle together and you don't even know what you're looking at until it's done. But it feels so natural sometimes. And it's one of the best feelings about running a game or playing in one.
Yeah, so I guess another thought process that comes out is to Steven and Jeremy. How does it feel like your characters? Does it feel like they have like an active like place in this world, or does it feel like they're constantly having to try to fit in one way or another? And I mean that as in like they stand out and you're trying to actively like fit the characters like in to where it's not like, oh, they feel like misplaced or whatever. I don't know if I'm asking the right question there, but
well, let's see. I always feel like in David's story, we as players and characters have some agency in the story that we're telling. So no, I don't feel out of place with the character. I feel like if our character isn't given a place, we're freely able to put them in their place, give them a place, and every now and again, some of that stuff will get talked about off mic, you know, around a dinner table or on a walk through the woods. We'll talk about, okay, exactly how can this character fit into this scenario? And David is always very accommodating and will offer some input, some guidance without giving away too much of our story, so it's still a surprise for us as to how these characters can fit into his setting. So no, I don't often feel out of place with our characters.
what about you, Jeremy? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it kind of feels like with the collaborative effort that we are all, you know, able to have with each other, it feels like our characters are always in the exact place that they belong in every scenario.
Yeah. And you all keep on mentioning hikes and walking the woods, and I just feel like David's going to pull a soprano on you all at any moment. That's going to be one day I turn on the news, it's like, Dungeon Master kills his players after a walk in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly take advantage of the beautiful country that we live in up here in northern New Hampshire. We're big outdoors fans, and I think that, you know, a lot of our ideas come from those walks in the woods. We find inspiration out there.
You just see two skunks going at it with each other. It's like, oh, that gives me an idea for the campaign.
That gives me a great idea for my next character. Yeah.
It's like there's a short I've seen where this guy does animated shorts, and it's just him as a demon in different scenes. Like, he's at a restaurant. Oh, this gives me a great idea for a D&D campaign. He's at a wedding. Oh, this gives me a great idea for a D&D campaign. He's in the shower. I just got a good idea for a D&D campaign.
He should hit the woods. We find lots of great ideas out there.
It's like he's tied up and about to get shot in the head. Oh, I have an idea for a new D&D campaign. Yeah, just all the different stuff I'm coming up with. So, because I was talking about some of the solo play stuff that I'm trying to work on. So, I bought this. It's a game. It's called Atomic Punk 2160, and it's this 2D10 OSR style like post-apocalypse game. And what I'm going to do with that is there's a mod for Fallout New Vegas called Fallout Dust. And it takes in the mod, it's a completely new game. It takes place like 20 years after the events of New Vegas, and the idea is you're like the lone survivor, and you only have one goal: escape the Mojave. And you're trying to fight off like new enemies. Like, a lot of the people that were in the New Vegas game are like long gone now, and you're just trying to survive. Like, a lot of the surviving members of the Legion are now cannibals and stuff. So it's just this weird like post-apocalypse now horror game. And I want to take my character, who's going to be a NCR soldier, and he's going to try to go from one side of the map to the other to try to escape to Zion, which is part of the Honest Hearts DLC, where you meet like Joshua Graham and Daniel and all that in New Vegas. I don't know if y'all have played New Vegas at all, but it's a really cool DLC, and the story behind that section alone is really awesome. That it's like I wanted to play with that a little bit for this solo game I was planning.
I haven't played any of that stuff, but I'm starting to see why you don't exactly have time for music anymore. You're got so many different things.
And then I've got another one because I'm very big on like my World War II history. So there was actually a company that made it's a game called Operation White. It's World War II Operation White Box. And it's basically a white box World War II ttrpg. And I'm going to do a spin on it where it's going to be like supernatural World War II. And I actually got another book from some friends I have that they made like goes into like there was like a big old Nazi occult thing that was going on during War II. They did a story where it's like, it's like the Japanese veil of Pearl Harbor, to make it like there was like some supernatural stuff that happened when the Pearl Harbor got bombed too, kind of deal. So I'm going to play with that. And his name is Roy Cherry Cotton. And they call him Cherry because he was still a virgin when he joined. He was saving himself for a sweetheart. So everyone called him Cherry. But it don't bother me none.
Oh, that sounds. So let me ask: these solo adventures, how long would you expect one to take?
Well, that depends on if I can survive long enough to go through the whole thing too.
That's a good point.
Because especially the post-apocalypse one, it has rules for like it does major rules for like radiation and then food and water as well. So like literally, like I could get radiation sickness and die from just losing my constitution points before even losing HP. Like, I could actually lose, like, my constitution modifier.
Huh.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you know, like how, in Fallout, it has the special stats, and all the stats in Atomic Punk are named after Atomic. So it's like, hold on, I have it actually on here because I was working on the character sheet the other day. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. That's not it.
Think of any of them. T might be toughness.
T was toughness. No, I don't think A was athletics. No, it was agility, toughness, observation, and then I think might. It was might, intelligence, and C was something else. It wasn't constitution.
It was
charisma? Something else. May have been charisma. I'm about to find out here in a second. It's taking forever to load it up. It's like I already had it open, and it still takes forever to load things up half the time. But it did that play on words like how Fallout did for special. It does that same thing with the word atomic. Okay, here it is. Agility, toughness, observe, might, intellect, and charisma.
Oh, okay. That's
so
cool.
You're right. It is charisma. So, yeah, then there's like a small % chance that like you can become a mutant too. So that's kind of a fun thing. And then it's got one of those he even gives you option. It's got one thing where it's like race as class, and that's like a robot. So you can play like as a robot just wandering the wasteland if you wanted to.
That honestly sounds like a fantastic time.
I would love to be a robot.
Yeah. So I think I may have rolled percentage die on this, but I have this idea where it's like if my character dies, it's like, oh, the NCR like backed up his brain to like a robot somewhere in the desert, and now all of a sudden after he dies, his robot eyes flicker on, and he's now in this. They remember all the memories, but now he's in this robot body.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, because I think they kind of did that with the Sense in Fallout, where it's like they had like if the human died, they would just like they had ways to re-upload that person's memories into like a robot body. I think I've never. It's like I just put a little bit of lore I do know. So I could be absolutely wrong. So don't call me out on it. Yeah, and then like frickin', I was listening to earlier because I just started following a new show podcast. And they're only 8 episodes in, but they're doing a Fate RPG podcast. And Fate is it's by Evil Hat, and it's based off the fudge dice system, which is this kind of old school system where it's like instead of like a number, like the fudge dice are like 2 sides are blank, 2 sides are positive, 2 sides are negative, and you roll like I think it's usually you roll like 4 dice, and then you can add like some stats and stuff to it because Fate and Fudge are more about like narrative storytelling. So the dice you roll kind of help dictate like how the story progresses forward. And it's similar to like how Forged in the Dark works, where it's like when you roll the dice, even if you fail, you can still the story can still progress forward, just with some complications in the mix.
Sure.
Like we were talking about Blades of the Dark, and some of us have already been listening to Haunted City, so we know how that goes.
Yeah. Success with complications. Yeah, for sure.
So hold on. How far? I don't know. Was it you, Steven, that said you were listening to Haunted City, or was that one of the other guys?
Me and Steven both do. I've been doing a lot this last month.
I don't know how far you're
season 1.
Yeah, I'm already in season 2, so I didn't know how far you all got. But some of the crazy shit that Glass Cannon does in that Haunted City campaign is just wild. But I live for every moment of it because they just get so creative, and the storytelling is so great with half the characters they do. So I'm really loving it. Same with their like we were talking about their Delta Green campaign that Glass Cannon did. Because that's one thing. So I love Delta Green. I hate Call of Cthulhu though, because trying to make a character in Call of Cthulhu is such a pain in the ass because you're having to flip through like every stinking chapter just to find certain aspects to work on the next part of your character sheet, and that I despise that so much when a character creation is like that, where you're just having to flip through like several chapters. And like I was mentioning before the show started too, like games I bought that I regret buying. One of those was also the Power Rangers role-playing game that released by Renegade Studios.
What?
There's a Power Rangers role-playing game?
Wait, what?
Fantasy Pants is canceled. We're doing that now.
Yeah, exactly. I'll see you guys next Thursday. I want to be the Red Ranger.
So Renegade Studios has this series of IPs they've done because they're the ones that have done all the new 5th edition like Masquerade games. So they have Vampire, Wolf, Werewolf, and Hunter, new editions of those. But then they have G.I. Joe role playing game. They have a Transformers role playing game. Then they also did a Power Rangers role playing game. But when I tried to read through the Power Rangers role-playing game, I got so lost and so confused, and even trying to watch videos on it, trying to figure out how character creation works, I still got lost trying to figure out how to understand it. Like someone made a Lasers and Feelings hack that was a play on Power Rangers, and I would rather play that than the Renegade Studio version.
There is such a wide and wild world of TTRPGs out there. I haven't heard of half of this stuff.
Yeah, and also the original person who made Lasers and Feelings was John Harper himself, who was the author of Blades in the Dark.
Yeah, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And Lasers and Feelings, it's just a small, like, you just pick a number between 2 and 5, and your stats are based on if you can roll above or below the number. It depends, and it's literally it's one of those. Also, again, it's more of those narrative-driven games. The only thing I can describe close to it is there was another game that was released before. It was called Honey Heist, where it's about bears like invading a con to steal honey.
Oh yeah,
and it's similar to that.
Huh.
Jeez.
And so that people have made so many different hacks of that. Like there's a Smash and Bros, which is basically like a Smash Bros. Spin all these feelings. There's I'm trying to think what else. There was like there's so many. I saw one they did was like one was a Sonic parody, another they did like a John Wick parody. Wow. There's a cowboy one. There's a mafia movie one. People if you go on itch.io.com, you can just find there's like a whole page about just made for Lasers and Feelings hacks that people have made out there. Because it's one of those games where John Harper was like, "Here's the game. Here's how you make it. Have at it."
Wow, there's just not enough time. I would just never have enough time to play everything that I want to play, man, and it's so sad.
Yeah, and also it's trying to find people who want to play them too, because that's the big thing. That's the biggest issue I have when it comes to like trying to play other TTRPGs is because, like, again, this is not me like completely hating on D&D. It's good for what it was, or good for what it is. I'm not denying the impact it has on the hobby in general, but it's all people have ever played for so long now that trying to get people to play other TTRPGs besides D&D and Pathfinder is almost impossible to do sometimes, because even the easiest ones, no one wants to take the time to learn, is an issue that I've come across.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge challenge there. And hopefully we see that shifting as we go. I think the rise of more TTRPG shows that show these systems will help a lot, because I imagine one of the biggest barriers for entry is that in a lot of these campaigns, a lot of these games, they're going to be pretty long, and if you don't mesh with the system after the first while, you feel like you're locked into something that you might not be as excited about, where the D&D is that sort of sure thing over there that you can rely on. But I hope to see more. I hope to play more and run more and help people experience more.
Well, and I think the more that these, bigger gaming companies, the more they make the fool of themselves, the more willing people are to go out of their comfort zone and go out of their way to find some of these more niche, lesser known games and try something different.
Yeah, because like I was also saying earlier, hold up, were you about to say something, Jeremy, or was that just me echoing back on your end?
Negative. Nope.
Okay, I must have just heard, maybe I just heard myself come back on your end for a second. So, like I was also saying earlier before the show, one thing that, because I'm on the hot take streak here, was like, come on the train with me, gentlemen.
Bring it on!
This is the hot take episode.
One things I constantly share is, like I was saying earlier, is I find the retro clones of D&D to be a lot better than D&D itself. Like, for example, there's one called Swords and Wizardry, and it's a clone of kind of like AD&D Basic Expert. It's a clone of that. But when I read through that, I understand that way better than if I was like to look through AD&D, and I'm like, what in the world? Because it just does a better explain. And also, Swords of Wizardry, it provides both ways to do THAC0 and Ascending Armor class, which I really appreciate it, because I have a hard time trying to understand THAC0 half the time. So having the Ascending Armor class option is really great to have.
I still don't know. I still don't know what THAC0 is all about. I hear all these stories and about it, like this legendary, horrible thing from the past, and I can't wrap my head around even 5e, which is much more simplified. So yeah.
Well, I guess what that says to me is that, as smart and as involved as a lot of these game creators are, there's such a powerful and intelligent community out there who maybe isn't involved in the creation of these games, but has such an understanding and has such a a smarter way maybe to explain some of these things, and hopefully some of these game companies learn to rely on their fans and some of their crowdsourcing to get those ideas and to better explain the complex rules that they're trying to put out for us to enjoy.
Like, Jeremy, you got any thoughts you want to share? You've been pretty quiet.
Yeah, no, I don't really. Steven and David are much more in tune with the broader gaming world than I am. I just kind of play with my two best friends, and that's what I do.
It's like I stay in my lane and I'm happy and content there, basically.
Yep, and I edit in my dungeon.
Yeah. Like, you edit, you make music in your dungeon.
Me, David, and Jeremy, we just recorded an episode before we sat down to do this, and as I was driving home, I was kind of thinking about our origins, and because I knew you would ask questions about that, and I came up with this fun little metaphor, I guess, for our group. I thought about it like David is this musician with all this skill and all this the story to tell, and I came into David's sort of D&D world kind of like an electric guitar, and for a little while it was just David strumming this dead electric guitar that wasn't plugged into anything. And then Jeremy came along as our amplifier, and without Jeremy, we weren't making any noise, you know what I mean? So once we finally got plugged in, the three of us all together were able to make something that sounded pretty cool.
Aw, what a bromance. No, it's like, I got all these, I'm hopping on my soapbox here, because now I got all these thoughts going through my head. As I prepare to drop another big dookie on with the fantasy pants, because another thing I've noticed is I don't know how familiar you are with Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but the original version of it they had back when when it was following the OGL before they redid it. I owned the book. It is so thick and it's filled with so much content that just looking at it just overwhelms me without even cracking the book. Yeah. However, the new non-OGL version of 2nd Edition that they released has so much less content in it compared to the book that I feel like this is a rip compared to what this. Because, yeah, I may be overwhelmed looking at Pathfinder, but it gave me stuff I could work with, gave me more options, and then it's like you basically just slashed the options in half with the new version. So I was just like, it was just such a weird difference where it's like going from overwhelmed to being disappointed.
This is the Pathfinder 2nd Edition remaster you're talking about?
Yeah, the remaster has so much less content in it compared to the original 2nd Edition.
That's interesting.
The original 2nd Edition was the OGL compatible one because they were making stuff alongside the OGL for a while before WotC did their bullshit, which is a whole other podcast that I can do. Just talking about that crap alone. Because what's funny was I had no clue what the OGL was until that fiasco started. So that was like a thunderstorm trying to learning about all that stuff. And then when they did the remaster, removing all the OGL stuff, so much less content. Like there was stuff about like the world and the gods and religions, not even mentioned anywhere in the new 2nd Edition. Which I thought was like that kind of played a big deal with a lot of the classes that you had. Was what god you served and what was like their purpose behind serving the god and all that played a big role in some of your classes.
Sure. Yeah, and even just, a lot of the flavor and whatnot. So my quick sort of funny story with, my journey to learning Pathfinder, I went to a game store and found the 2nd Edition rulebook on sale, like, I don't know, whatever it was, 10 or 20% off or something like that. So I was like, okay, sure, this big, thick, intimidating book. All right, now's the time to buy it. So I decided to buy it, and I went on the Discord later, and I, bragged and was like, oh yeah, look what I got. And then somebody on the Discord was like, "Oh, is that the remaster or the old version?" I was like, "Shit! I didn't even know that there was a remaster." Bought the second edition. No wonder why it was on sale, right? And then to top it all off, I found a friend who was willing to run a Pathfinder game for me, and she's playing first edition anyways. So it was all for naught.
Yeah.
So now I have this big, scary, intimidating book sitting on the bookshelf that I probably will never open.
Yeah. So there's another YouTube channel I follow. So I don't know if y'all have heard of this one. There's a game out there called Savage Worlds. And
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and how that one works is instead of like modifiers and rolling d20s, you have different dice for like the majority of like your stats that you roll for and skills and stuff. And so you can say if you're trying to do if you're trying to battle something with like your strength, you could roll like d6s or d4s compared to like, oh, you just roll d20 and add +3 or whatever. Well, they have Savage Worlds. They have a version of the game that's first edition Pathfinder, but with Savage Worlds rules instead of just how regular Pathfinder does theirs. So it's really cool, and they're doing they've done their own spin of the Dragonlance game with that set of rules, which is really cool. So that was like one of my first D&D materials I got, because I listened to a podcast. They did a whole entire playthrough of the Dragonlance, the 5e one, not the old AD&D Dragonlance, the 5e one. But I really enjoyed the story. Got the book. I'm going to plan to do some stuff with it later. At some point in time. I've actually been working on something with that for like the last 2 years, and that's a whole thing. So
it's a great book. I've run a fair bit of it for Reckless, our brew pub we work at. There's a sort of campaign with a lot of the folk there that I run Shadow of the Dragon Queen for, and it's a really good adventure.
Yeah, and then I'm just thinking about let's see, I have Curse of Strahd, I got Out of the Abyss. I need to get Tyranny of the Dragon Queen because I really wanted that one, because it's kind of almost a sequel to Dragonlance almost, because it's because it's still Tiamat and all that. It's like there's some D&D has good content. I just wouldn't run D&D with it. I would just choose other games that I would make work and do the necessary workarounds for it. Which again, I don't mind to do. It's not that hard to do if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. I really want to get out there and explore more. I have one huge wall to climb over in order to actually experience more systems, and I do intend to climb this wall. And I'm gonna take the pants off again here and reveal something that nobody here wants to know. My aversion to reading is so problematic. I have never read the Dungeon Master's Guide. I have never read through the Player's Handbook. And worst of all, I have never actually fully read Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. I give it cursory glances and very fast sweeps, and I don't... I'll run an arc and look back at the book and be like, oh, I did all of that wrong.
Crucify him.
Get me!
Degenerates like you belong on the cross.
I cannot read. I used to read all the time, but I got into audiobooks, and now I just my eyes drift from the words, and it's the biggest problem because I want to explore more systems, and I look at a book and I just want to throw up, and that's where I'm at.
Well, Hunter, you mentioned this before with something that you were doing where you based a game off of the book, but you added your own flair to it. And that's, clearly what David's doing with the Radiant Citadel. And, I've listened to a lot of podcasts and games that are playing it straight by the book. And I really like, especially with a good and creative DM, I like to see that little bit of added flair. It makes the game more unique, less cookie cutter. It's more exciting that way, I find. So I'm really thrilled with what guys like you and what guys like David are doing with some of these very, well thought out books. But adding their own artistic touch to it.
Yeah, and so similar to like what David said, for my Knights of Paintown campaign, it's an official module by the makers of City of Mist. I've never read through that book entirely. However, this is how I learned a lot of my of like different how the work ttrpg stuff is. I listened to a show that ran through the full thing. And that's why I'm so familiar with kind of like Knights of Paintown and kind of like, here's an idea of how to run it, and then I use my own little spin and twist on it because I listened to someone run it. It's one of my better ways of how I learn other games is I try to find a show, find one that I like that's running the game, and then I learn through that. Like there's a show out there that they're very like you all. They're very comedic. They run Morkborg games, and they're called Flail to the Face. And Morkborg is that very kind of grim, dark, fast-paced, violent, kind of old-school D20 game. But it's really neat and fun for, like, if you just want to go, like, all out with a crazy, violent shenanigans, Morkborg is that kind of game. And it's also one of those games where it's, like, big third-party licensing. So there's, like, Cyborg, which is like Cyberpunk. There's Pirateborg, which is the really big one now. Is Pirateborg, which is basically like Pirates of the Caribbean, but with Morkborg rules. And there's just so many different like Morkborg style games out there, and I own a few of them. Like I have one called Castaway, and basically take the Tom Hanks movie, but make it more violent.
Castaway needed a little more violence.
Yeah.
Wilson! Stab.
You son of a bitch.
You slept with my wife, and the camera pans to a coconut.
Well, maybe as far as reading modules go, it seems like we have that in common. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe our poor attention spans can't take all that heavy text anymore.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, and that was one thing I actually appreciate about, because I mentioned this when on the last Unzip was I brought up Shadow Dark, and if you read, and it's 5 Shadow Dark is it's a game, it's a weird it's an interesting combination of 5e and OSR rules in one, but the thing it's so awful it's like a I'll have to show you guys. I think I did share a picture of the book. I think when I got it on the server, I don't remember. Yeah. It's a decently sized. It's like the size of a normal book, but there's so much packed into it. But while all still remaining rules light as well. It's like, and it's not like walls of text like a D&D book. The font is decent. It's short, sweet, to the point. Like even the monster details are just like, here's like a little sentence that says, "Oh, like honey badger, big scary fucker," and then it's the stats. It doesn't actually say that, but you get my point.
Yeah, that's great.
Because I remember someone was like, "Oh, these monster descriptions aren't detailed enough." I'm like, "You're the GM. How much descriptions do you need to come up with how you describe a monster?" Like,
sure, well, yeah. If you're given the broad strokes, then you can make it your own, and then we get to spend less time reading and more time playing.
Exactly. The GM should be making the game their own. At least I believe so. Like the GM should be having just as much fun as the actual players are. Because this is actually something I've discussed with people. Is the GM is just as much of a player in the game, just with a different role.
Yeah, absolutely right. We all show up at the table, to play a game, and it shouldn't be work for the GM. Like you said, they should be having just as much fun. Otherwise, what's the point?
I love the idea of the short and sweet, to increase fun, because I'm trying to imagine playing a game with some serious lore, heavy lore knowledge focused players, and you're over there like, so you see the purple worm and her eggs, and it's like, actually, GM, purple worms only mate in the spring season, and this is taking place during fall. So it's like, well, I don't want to read the whole book. That's not fun. I want to make it all up as I go, because that's way more fun. And yeah, that Shadow Dark sounds like it really nails that. I love that a lot. Yeah,
like, okay, so I got the book because it was right near me. So, like, really, it says for, like, a bandit, hard-bitten rogue in tattered leathers and a hooded cloak. That's all it gives you for the description of a bandit. And then it has the AC, HP, how the attacks work, and then it has, like, an extra effect that it can do. because it has like this ambush ability where if you're not detected, it gets an extra die. But I mean, it's the basic details. I mean, at least I would say you don't need that much to work with a monster like a. My brain is going all over the place now, so it's like, okay, thoughts, get back here now.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's like, you want to be provided with the basic building blocks, and you want to, paint those building blocks as you see fit to create your own story.
Yeah, that's why it's like this is not, don't take this the wrong way, but I like to call myself a rules light supremacist because I'm more of a fan of the rules light, like setting agnostic RPGs, because it's like, oh, here's a game, it has rules and mechanics, and then I can just do whatever the fuck I want with it.
Very freeing, it sounds. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, and then it's like, and this was actually something that I've actually discussed even on my last podcast. Something I brought up that I've noticed when I started getting more into the TTRPG hobby is people want narrative more than numbers. People don't want to spend 3 hours in a combat against like a couple of bandits and figure out how all the numbers add up. They want a good, it's like, because especially like for me, this is an escape for me. I work hard, I come home, and then I maybe want to sit down, come online, and either have great discussions with guys like you, or play with guys like you. A good game. And so I don't want to pull a 4E and just number crunch the whole time, because that's all 4E did was number crunch. And we all, and I'm sure y'all have heard the stories about 4th edition D&D.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
Go ahead.
I think we all feel the same way, where we want to play the game the correct way, but we also don't want to get caught up in the weeds. And like we said earlier, it's about having fun, man. And sometimes that comes with a little bit of a suspension of reality, and rule of cool before anything else, I guess.
Rule of cool,
or at least got to make room for that.
Because that was also something I respect you guys for, is whenever you guys you guys try to hold each other accountable for like, hey, the rules actually say this. Do we want to kind of retcon that, or do we want to like, hey, we don't like this rule, can we get rid of it? I like that you guys actually actually converse about that on air. Like you talk about like the shit you like to do, the shit you don't like to do, and then the homebrew stuff y'all throw in just to kind of mix it up a little bit. I really respect y'all that y'all do that. That's kind of like how it should be. Not everything should be raw. Yeah,
we try to cut out of the recording as little as possible, and the stuff that we do cut out is mostly that, like, the number crunchy blah blah blah. It's like, okay, hold on, be right back, we're gonna go read a rule or two. But yeah, David's always very flexible, and we're all very vocal about the rules that we do and do not like, and we want to clue everybody in on how we want to play our game. So that's why we leave that stuff in.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, while I say like I'm big on the rule 0 about GM being like the final arbiter of decisions at the table, that doesn't mean that the players can't like come to the GM and be like, hey, can we talk to you about this? Players and GMs need to have that communication with each other just as much as the players should trust whatever decision the GM makes about a call or ruling at the table. So yeah, the fact that you, that's why also kind of, I think that, lost my train of thought again, give me a second. The fact that you guys are also such a small enough group that you all feel comfortable enough to be able to talk about this stuff with each other, I think also makes it a really, really cool as well.
Yeah, that's really well said. That's exactly how we feel, is, comfortable enough to call each other out, and ultimately, we follow David's rule, because that's his role.
Yeah, it's definitely like if you got like 6 people at one table and then David's trying to wrangle all 6 people together, because another hot take dookie I'm about to drop. Ooh. I have no issues with railroading my players if I need to, because, and hear me out for this one before y'all burn me at the stake. Even though I'm the one running the game, it's also the thing is I only may have like a select amount of time to run a said game or that session. So as much as I'm okay with players having their agency and they're doing whatever they want, there's only so much of that I can allow before it's like, okay, now we gotta get back on track and continue the game. So it's not that I'm taking away their agency, but it's like there's still a plan that I have that we kind of still gotta follow at the same time.
Yeah,
I hear that fully. I actually worry often that I'm extremely railroady DM because like I have, I feel like in the podcast in particular, I feel often that could be something, an attribute I carry, but it just helps to express the story, and especially because you collab with the players to tell the story they want to tell. And if you know certain things, you might drop certain hints and kind of push them into one direction, and it feels at the time might feel kind of bad, but it's like, you know what? No, this is going to be the most fun for everybody. This is going to be great. It's just kind of a matter of trust in each other, and so yeah, I don't think it's wrong to railroad necessarily.
Yeah, and the way I kind of think about it is, especially when I listen to when y'all do the show, I feel like you, David, how you do your story. There's a starting point, but then that starting point gets split off into like 10 different paths, but all those paths will still converge at one ending point. So it sounds bad. It's almost like it's the illusion of an option, but it's like, hey, there's these options for you. The story can go this way, story can go that way, or it can go that way, or it can go that way, but it all will still converge at one ending point.
That's pretty accurate. It's like I have certain points. It's accurate, and there's also certain points where like in times where I have this set idea in my mind, and then something will happen, and then it's like I change that plan entirely, and I didn't plan on changing that plan, so everything goes scattered to the ether. But there's a healthy mix, I would say, where sometimes you just kind of have to abandon all your plans and dive into something new, and that can be also very exciting.
Yep. So I guess I'll just wrap it up with a final question. Where do y'all see Fantasy Pants going from here? I mean, eventually Radiant Citadel is going to come to an end. What's kind of your plan for like the future of the show?
Oh boy. David?
You guys want to take this? I'll take this.
Well, I think we can all agree that we don't want Fantasy Pants to end when Radiant Citadel ends.
Oh no.
I mean, that's a no-brainer.
So I will say Radiant Citadel is an amazing starting point, and I think I actually mentioned it in the episode we just recorded, which was our episode 100. It feels like a huge moment. I mentioned it in this episode that I think we could potentially be halfway through the first campaign. So maybe around episode 200, we might see this story actually coming to its close. From there, I can't make any promises because it's so far out that minds will change 1,000 times over. But I do want to homebrew something, and I have the starts of a homebrew setting and campaign kind of in the works. I've been kind of doing like some little work on that on the side. I'm very excited about it. I'd like to create my own setting, or I could potentially make up a module if I felt like it, something like that, just to do something a little more freeing. And that is my sort of immediate potential plan for the main podcast.
Do you possibly see yourselves bringing anyone else into the inner circle of the Pants Council? Or do you think it's just going to be just you three still going forward? I'm just curious to know.
It's a tough one. I'll let you guys take it away.
I don't think we would ever rule anything out, but I think we're happy and comfortable with the way it is. We've fallen into such a routine. I mean, gosh, who knows? It's hard to say yes or no to that question.
We're also in the country, and the population here is very low, so that's a big part of it too.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I think it's one of those things where if that were to ever be, a thing, it would be one of those just organic moments and things where we're like, okay, this is just right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I remember my for my podcast crew for Nights for Nails and Kneecaps, I ran 2 one-shots to City of Mist for them before I was like, hey, you guys want to make this a campaign and do a podcast with me over it? And everyone was like, fuck yeah! Because again,
It's great when you find the right people. It's awesome.
Exactly.
They're a great bunch of guys. Like everyone's just like I call them the hot mess, the attention deficit hey donuts, the tiefling milk connoisseur, and that's a whole story in of itself. Because he literally did a Twitter post asking Ed Greenwood about what tiefling breast milk tasted like, because literally how we all met was through the Discord server of the VTuber tiefling Melissa. and that's where we all met, and that's how we all tied in together. A great bunch of people. Yes, we're all degenerates. I don't judge. And then we have the note taker is who we call the parent, because again, he's like the most normal out of all of us, and he's just like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, it's really special when you find a group that you click with to that level.
Yeah. So I am, especially because again, I love the episodes. You guys make me laugh. I enjoy every bit of the roller coaster ride you guys take me on with the show. So it has been a roller coaster for sure.
Wow, thank you so much. It's really, really encouraging to hear that, and I think we're surprised and humbled every time we get feedback like that. So really, really and truly, thank you.
Yeah, every time it means the world. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Because that's why I do this over the table section. It's ttrpg content creators and makers that I like and I enjoy that I just want to share with other people. Because like there's like a new one I listen to. I think they actually commented on one of your posts and I backed them up. They're called Mystical Everyday Heroes, aka Meh. And
sure, yeah, we know those guys. Yep.
Yeah. I see them comment every now and then, and we just happen to start following each other on Instagram. And I listen to their show, and they're also comedy podcast. And I've been enjoying them too. I tried to get them on here, but they said we want to kind of build ourselves up a little more. And I'm like, it's understandable. I'm still here, and the offer's still on the table. So whenever they're ready, I'm here for it. So I'm ready for the shenanigans. So, all right. So, anyways, tell everyone where they can find y'all at.
Ooh, yeah, you can find us mostly on Instagram at Fantasy Pants Pod. We upload, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, the whole shebang.
Yep, and definitely I will make sure to post a link to it on the show notes. Join the Discord, because it is a great bunch.
Yes, our Discord. Yes, we're very happy to have you on there, Hunter. It's always great to chat, and the Discord's growing, it seems, every week.
It's like we are depancing more people to our cults every day.
Exactly. Everybody wears pants, so yeah, if you wear pants, come hang out.
Yep.
Or if you don't, that's fine too.
And definitely make sure to leave them like a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you can do that, because hey, these guys deserve it. I did give them a 5-star review on Spotify. I'm pretty sure for that. And Spotify also does comments, so leave him a nice comment. Tell David he's an asshole, but lovingly.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
That's never going to get old at any time soon. All right. Well, gentlemen, this has been great. I love that we just got to talk, learn more about you, go off the rails, as this show always does. And like I said, I look forward to the continuing episodes, and congratulations on episode 100. Big milestone, and you guys deserve it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hunter.
Thanks.
It means a lot to us.
All right. And to the listening audience, you can always find me on Instagram at I don't know why I'm blanking out now on my own I'm blanking out on my own Instagram user handle. Nope, that's not it. This is what happens when you work a 10-hour shift and then you get to go talk to a bunch of crazies like these guys. You forget everything. Rollin' Free ttrpg on Instagram. And you can also find Over the Table and my upcoming solo episodes, once I finally get around to recording those, on your preferred listening podcast platforms as well. Thank you all for joining us. Jeremy, Steven, David, thank you again for coming on here. This was great, and I had a fucking blast.
Thank you, and have a great night. This was a great time.
Yep, same.
Good night,
I had
everybody.
a really, really good time. Good night.
Everybody!
Good night.
Hello, nurse.